Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to Transnatural Perspectives. This is the show where we put nature in focus while cultivating perspectives on society and culture across environments and landscapes. I'm your host, Josh Bennett, recording live on a dark and stormy night here in Oslo, Norway, to all of you around the world. And wow, this is great. Here we are today, already into our fifth conversation, a little bit over a month into the show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in who's been doing it so far. And if you're just tuning in for the first time today, please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. And if you're listening on YouTube, you can also click that bell so you can be informed every time we drop a new episode. And please, please, please share these episodes. It's the best way that you can support the efforts of this show, by spreading the word of perspective on nature and culture, environment and sustainability out to all those good people who haven't got a chance to listen yet. So thanks for doing that, everybody who's been doing it already. And I can see that it's been working because this show has been listened to in over 30 countries in the past month. And that's pretty interesting, especially I think the only one we're missing right now, the only continent we're missing, we're on all the continents except Antarctica. So Antarctica, we are waiting. So hopefully they're coming soon. And so it's very nice to see that we have a very transcultural, very transnatural audience out there. So let's keep growing. I'd also like to give a shout out to my friends over at Wild Pedagogies, wildpedagogies.com, for creating a nice little home for the show on that site. You can check out wildpedagogies.com for more info about events, books, and publications over there. And now on to today's exciting guest, Huck Middeke. Huck is a wilderness guide and survival instructor based in Eastern Finland. He is chairman of the Wilderness Guide Association of Finland, and he's the founder of Nordic by Nature, which provides wilderness guide services, sustainability consulting, and survival workshops. Huck's latest endeavor is the establishment of Nomad Town. Nomad Town is a resilience hub, off-the-grid, minimalist, mobile community that lies on the outskirts of Joensuu, Finland. Today, he's here to talk about all this and a lot more of the theory and philosophy of survival and its importance in today's world, in today's Anthropocene. I think we might be also exploring some new frontiers here in the world of podcasting today, at least on this show, because our guest Huck is joining us from a sauna in northern Finland. We're still working on sauna acoustics for the future episodes, so please pardon any sound quality issues, but overall, it's a pretty relaxed conversation, and, well, what else could you expect from a conversation in a sauna? That being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with me and Huck. See you out there on the other side, everybody, for some reflections. Thanks for tuning in.
Huskies might be howling in
the Huskies. Yeah, okay, so anybody who's listening out there, you're listening to Huck Middeke. Am I saying your name right?
Yeah, I don't really care, but it's fine.
We've got Huck all the way over there in Finland from Nomad Town. You're going to tell us all about this. And where are you right now?
Right now, it's autumn holiday here in Finland, and I promised my son a road trip to as far north as he has never been before, and we're now in a place called Taivalkoski. So now we're closer to Rovaniemi than to Joensuu, where my hometown is, or where I'm now living.
Okay. So are you above the Arctic Circle right now or something?
I actually don't know.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, it's for most people in the world, I think, that are listening, almost everywhere is below where you're at right now. I mean, probably same goes for me. I'm here in Oslo, Norway, which is pretty crazy because I'm actually originally from the tropics, so it's an interesting environment to be in. But and where are you normally living?
It's a place called Joensuu, which means river mouth or river's mouth, and that's still the southern half of Finland and the east of Finland, or let's say a place people call Finland. And yeah, some time ago I was introduced at a party, like, hey, this is Huck, he lives in a yurt. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what kind of introduction is that? Like, if in Mongolia, you wouldn't get very far with that kind of introduction.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, this is Josh. He lives in an apartment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't say anything about anyone, in my opinion. Like, so, but apparently in that occasion, for that person who introduced me. That was
but that is interesting, right? It is kind of interesting to think that let's say for somebody that's not living in a yurt, and I would say, arguably, if you go to Mongolia or maybe some other countries, it's very common to live in a yurt, and it would be very like uncommon. Maybe if we were in Mongolia and you'd be like, oh, this is Josh, he lives in the city, So it is interesting. Yeah, I guess you're living in a yurt, and this is something kind of, I don't know, I guess a bit outside the norm in Yeonsu where you're living.
Yeah, a bit too much outside of the norm, if you ask the authorities.
So, and I'm just curious too. So where you are right now, what's the landscape like? Let's just get a little feel for the place that we're in right now.
Where am I right now? Well, I'm looking at a very calm lake. Well, this is certainly the subarctic boreal regions. So, the leaves have left the trees. So the ruska, this time of color, brown and red and purples and yellows, that time is basically over here. So, I'm looking at a very calm lake out of the window of a sauna. So I went into this sauna, which is still warm from yesterday, because it's a place where I'm undisturbed. It feels a bit strange to be sitting here with clothes and electronics. But
oh, that's lovely though. So you're in a sauna. Yeah, I remember, and you were telling me earlier that you were in a sauna last night. So sauna, one of my favorite things that I've kind of been introduced to since I moved to the north. This is a kind of a big deal up here in the north, and I think particularly a lot of people have heard about the Finnish sauna. So what's your connection with the sauna?
Well, I was in the sauna first time, I think, when I was 6 years old, and I'm not a Finn. I was born in Germany, so I was on holiday in Finland. Mm-hmm. My connection to sauna is, it's a very, very important place for me. It does so many things. Like it's connecting. Like when you sit with friends in the sauna, there's nothing distracting. So it's just you and the hot room. And what I really enjoy in the sauna is you can really play with the atmosphere. Like you can throw more water or less water. You can have sauna where you can sit for hours and just, be basically, imagine you sit in a sunny beach. It's like perfect. You don't feel any cold. It's cozy and warm, and you can just sit there for hours. And of course you're naked, which is, I think also a wonderful feeling in itself. And then you can also have that kind of sauna that you throw water on the stones and you get steam in the room. Finnish word löyly describes a lot more than throwing water to the stones. And then you can do nothing else but focus on your breath. Mm-hmm. Like it's not even, meditation. You have it's a technique, right? You focus on your breath to meditate. And in the sauna, that happens automatically. You don't even need to focus. It happens automatically. There's no space for anything else than your breath, because it literally takes your breath away sometimes. So, and you're really in the heat, and it's wonderful. Like the whole world disappears. Yeah. Well, you could go on and on about sauna. It's like, people used to be born in the sauna. People
really
were dying in the sauna. Yeah. It was, like when you think about the sauna, the origin of the sauna, it's like, it's easy to heat space because of the heat, and also originally because of the smoke, because the original sauna was a smoke sauna. You didn't have a chimney. You'd heat a pile of rocks inside a room or a hole in the ground, and the smoke would travel through the whole room and out of the hole. And once you had the stones heated up sufficiently, you let the fire go out, and then you go to the sauna, right? So, and it's a very sterile place. It's very clean. It's also easy to clean when you think of giving birth, which, can be quite a messy thing. Like it's easy to clean space. You wouldn't have 80 degrees in there, but you would have a nice temperature. You'd have access to plenty of hot water. So it's like the place also where you perform like little surgeries or so. And the sauna is, of course, the first place you build if you settle down somewhere. Because because you can live in the sauna, you can eat in the sauna. So sauna is perfect.
I mean, it does make a lot of sense because it's probably, especially if you're living, outdoors, and especially before we had, heating in homes and stuff like that. I mean, I imagine for hundreds and thousands of years, people have been trying to create warmth, especially in these cold places like Finland, Norway, Sweden, all the way up here up in the north. So, and I mean, I know saunas are very worldwide and, popular. So I'm sure saunas have like different meanings for different people. And I thought it was like really beautiful how you described the sauna. Is there still like people giving birth in saunas? Is this a thing? Because this is very fascinating to me.
I think it happens. I'm sure it happens. Like, like also home birth is becoming more popular, and also sauna is like, people know about that. Sauna was the place to give birth. So, and I think there's people who probably give birth in the sauna. Maybe as we speak, or as you listen, you who like this is. I want to say this because I'm always so fascinated by this technology. It's like a time travel, right? We are talking here right now. You there in Norway, me here in the sauna. We have our here and now, and then you, who are not here with us now, but still you listener, wherever you are, welcome. I greet you. It would be lovely to connect. It's so unbelievable for me to wrap my head around this, that there's another now and another here, right? The here and now of the listener.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's actually, that's something that I really do love about, this whole form of like media and storytelling and listening, that, we're creating a document right now that will be, I don't know, until we can imagine forever, on the internet or in some file somewhere, and people can listen to this and sit down and kind of have a conversation right here with us, or be a fly on the wall,
or be on the bicycle, or be outside. I think that's so nice with the podcast, because you don't need a screen.
Yes.
Like I'm always, you mentioned that I have a YouTube channel, we talked about this, and like, I find it so strange to talk in this piece of plastic, create a video, and knowing that I'm actually creating screen time, and as somebody who is into connecting people to nature, and like as a wilderness guide, screen time creators, they're kind of my enemy.
Yes. Yeah. I'm totally, we're on the same page when it comes to that. I mean, in the past, I used to do a lot of video work, and it's still enjoyable, but, I realized, not only am I in front of the screen a lot, editing and all this kind of stuff, but then you also end up creating screen time for other people. And like you said, that's what's really great about the audio format, is that, you can wash your dishes, you can walk outside, it's, you can just listen, and you don't have to look at anything. So
and also, like, compared to TV already, you can pause right now and continue listening when you're outside, and then you can, have some nature connection moments while you listen, maybe with one ear or so. I think these are beautiful options with the podcast. That's fascinating, and that makes me also very happy to be on your podcast. I'm very grateful.
Yeah. Oh man, thanks for coming on. It's funny. I was thinking about it this morning, and we've had, I think this might be somewhere around the 5th or so episode when this comes out. And already you're a product of this podcast, because I released the first podcast and then you responded. I always say, if you want to come on the show, just send me a message, and you did. And then now here we are. So it's pretty cool. This is the point, right? To reach out and get in contact with people and spread the word. And especially in a way, what I think is amazing about this format too, is that we can do it in a way where it doesn't have to go through some big academic process. There's so many great minds out there, and there's so many great people to talk to, and so many valuable words. And it's sometimes just takes forever to get these things out there, but it's actually really easy now with all of the really accessible technology that we have. So thanks for coming on. And yeah, very fascinating about the saunas too. Man, I could talk about that all day. I was thinking about my own sauna story and how, it's very different over here, I would say in Europe in general, or at least in the North, because, when I first came over, I mean, of course we have saunas in the States and stuff like that, but it's just like a totally different vibe. It's usually in a gym somewhere or some exclusive spa somewhere. And I was pretty impressed, especially in more of the Baltic countries, kind of like where you are right now. And down south there, I know my partner, she's from Lithuania. So I spend a lot of time over there. And it's just, people got saunas in their basements. It's very common. And now here in Oslo, we have saunas just kind of floating on the fjord. I think you might have something like that in Helsinki too. But yeah, when I first came, I was like, saunas, I don't understand. Why do people want to sit in a room and sweat, And especially, and that was my, just my kind of cultural, I mean, I also come from Florida, so it's a very hot place. So there's not a lot of reason to go in a sauna usually, unless you have some kind of injury that you need to heat or something. But yeah, how you describe the sauna is I was just in a sauna last week, and how you describe the sauna from your perspective is pretty right on in terms of like how you kind of feel like you've, just nothing really matters, and you can really clear your head in the sauna and really relax, and something very, I don't know, reinvigorating about the sauna.
Yeah, it's also like very cleaning. Like, yes. I mean, you really flush your skin from the inside out.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, and you feel like, when you scrub your skin or so you feel like the dead skin coming off, and like it's also, recommended to get a good sweat going, either through exercise or maybe through sauna, like, every now and then. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I made that because one thing I miss a lot, especially in the wintertime, is of course you can do stuff like, you can still be active in the wintertime, go skiing, go hiking in the forest, these kinds of things. But, you coming from a tropical place, you find yourself sweating just all the time, and I miss that. And I found that I can get that from the sauna. So
it's interesting that you missed it, because I try to avoid sweating. I feel myself like a really lazy bum. I try to avoid sweating. Like, I mean, it's like I think I'm a very, I don't know, how do you say, like rational, plausible person. Like I don't engage so much in feelings and what would be nice and so. And especially in the winter, avoid sweating at all costs. Like it's much easier to be warm than to be dry when you go and you spend weeks in the winter outside.
Oh,
and it's just so much more important.
Yeah, and you don't want to sweat so much in the winter, because then you might freeze.
You don't want to sweat at all.
Yeah,
no. Because it means you're wasting energy. It's usually one of the things. Like you need energy for cooling, right? You're losing liquid also, and salts and stuff. But it's really like, it's just you get your insulation wet. It's another one.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I guess this whole kind of hibernating in the winter idea that all the non-humans animals are doing, they're just hibernating mostly in the winter, and you don't want to let out the energy, you don't want to let out the nutrients.
And wouldn't you want to do that?
Of course, yeah. I mean, but then it kind of contradicts with what I guess probably most humans are doing during the wintertime, which is like the same thing, still going to work, still riding the bus, still, going to school, all of these things. And another thing I noticed since, moving to the north is I'm just like, my goodness, like we should be hibernating right now. I don't really feel like we should.
Yes,
we should be going through the same motions that we would during the sunny times of the year.
Yes. Which are you? The 8 Shields model, or is it? I don't know if it's a model. It's a concept. It's a philosophy. I don't know what is the right word, but have you heard about the 8 Shields?
No. Tell us about it.
It's something that I have heard through John Young, like Nature Connection mentor, master John Young, student of Tom Brown, and or mentee of Tom Brown, and very, very good stuff that he has. And I think he has, I mean, many of our listeners now, they probably know about John Young, because the Coyote Guide to Connecting with Nature is like one of his main works, together with others. And or What the Robin Knows About Bird Language. Really recommend his stuff. also listening to his talks. And through him, I heard about the 8 seals. And the 8 seals is like something that he and others found out when they were looking at like what kind of systems are in place in many cultures where there's something shared. And there's we have the 4 directions, right? The north, the south, the east, the west, and then those 4 in between. So those make the 8 seals, right? The 8 directions. But also there's the seasons. So, and they're corresponding to, for example, the east is the spring, right? So the sun comes up in the east, at least also in the southern hemisphere, but in the northern hemisphere, it travels through the south. And the south is then the summer, but also the midday and the south. So now we are moving towards the winter. And the winter is like the time of sleeping and the time of wisdom and dreaming and conserving energy. And it's like, for me, it's very much the time of sleeping. And I find it really, really tempting to keep the lights on. But now, luckily, I have some restrictions because I'm restricted to solar power. I have a small solar setup, and I have had to reduce my electronics to mobile phone headlamp and a radio. And yeah, it's still pretty tight in the winter to get my electricity for that. But it means that I simply spend more time in the dark and I spend more time sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I would even sleep more.
Yeah, it almost seems in the winter you can't get enough sleep sometimes, because I think that's just, I think our bodies would probably prefer to just go to sleep for like 3 months,
Yeah, and it's a very plausible thing. Like when you think about like energy efficiency, the closer you move the insulation to your body, the less space you need to heat.
Mm.
Right. So if I take a sleeping bag or blanket and throw in maybe 1 or 2 hot water bottles and my own, the calories that I burn in my body to create my body heat, and I trap this heat in a small cocoon, then I don't need to heat much space. So if I now think if I would want to, sleep naked in my yurt, and the yurt has some insulation, and I wouldn't want to use a blanket, I would need to heat the yurt a lot to keep it at a nice temperature. And so now I have the luxury that I can just let the yurt go cold while I sleep.
Mm.
So the more time I spend sleeping, the less energy I use. And the less work I have making firewood or earning money to buy energy or whatever system you use.
Yeah, actually, yeah, this is something I thought about before too. I like that idea. The more time you sleep, the less time you need to spend doing all of these other kind of societal human things. So, yeah, tell us a little bit, I guess, where are you living now? I know you're up in the north right now, but back in more southern Finland, are you living with at Nomad Town right now, as you call it?
Yeah, well, the Nomad Town is basically a bit of my brainchild, but it's also like at the same time the result of some collective effort and experimentation. So
paint us a little picture. How does this? There's some really great videos on Huck's YouTube channel showing what the Nomad Town looks like in different iterations. But tell us a little bit about it.
Well, like first of all, the Nomad Town is a so-called resilience hub, and it's a place where, in the moment, we're living. Like we have 2 inhabitants. In the summer, we had between 8. Last winter, we had 4 inhabitants. So it's like nomads passing through. So it's like basically a place where people who consider themselves as nomads should be able to feel so home that they can host their friends there. At the same time, this Nomad Town is like, it's basically a bit like a mobile eco-village. So we're like mobile in ourselves. All the infrastructure is mobile, or we're using something that we find on site, on the location, and make it usable. So in the moment, there's, for example, an old sauna on the place that we are using. We're experimenting with high-level sustainability. So we are completely off-grid, have own well, we have compost toilets, own electricity. And the idea is to find out how high on the sustainability scale is it possible for us to live. So, and I think what like might be a nice example, like what maybe also many of us outdoorsy folks can relate to is like I once crossed the Alps from Germany to Italy with a 35 kilo backpack. So I was very young and inexperienced, and I had access to a lot of hiking equipment because I was working in a hiking store, and I had this 35 kilos for I think it was like less than 10 days. So I carried all the food. I had 2 pots. I had stove. I had fuel. I had a tent. I had 2 pairs of shoes. All kinds of really, and probably the backpack itself was empty, 3.5 kilo. And I realized that this was not a way to go. I needed to go lighter. And then I started to shave the weight. I went this ultra lightweight direction. A lot of DIY, a lot of expensive gear, lightweight expensive gear. So it was quite a process, and I learned a lot of, I made my own tarps and own sleeping systems and sleeping bags and stuff. And like eventually I ended up with 14 kilo for a 2-week hike, including all the food.
Wow.
In late autumn Lapland.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
so,
okay.
And that was
cold
like,
region.
Yeah, it was in a way, it was like a long journey to get there, and it was expensive and in a way energy and resource intense, like a lot of high-tech equipment. And then I had this eye-opener by taking part in a survival course by the Finnish Survival Guild. And we had a 1-week trip where we made 80 kilometers. That was late summer. And one night actually was frost. I remember one night was frost. And we were about 3 kilos.
Wow, that's
so we did it. Yeah, like it was about 3 kilos what we had as our starting weight. And of course, you kind of collect stuff, you build stuff on the way, like build a pack frame. But like the very beginning, we had like skin out something a bit over 3 kilos, less than 5 for sure. And we still managed. It was, it was not a nice, well, it was a very memorable trip. We were cold, we were hungry, we didn't sleep so well every night. So it was not like the pleasurous hiking experience, but I noticed that, okay, if I just throw in a rain poncho, for example, like one lightweight item, I could get a lot more comfort. So like what I'm trying to say is like what we are doing in the moment with our society is we try to make what we have grown used to, we try to make that more sustainable, right? And we're doing it exactly the same way as I went from the 35 kilo backpack to the 14 kilo backpack. And what we're trying in the Nomad Town is, okay, let's start high on the sustainability scale, right? Go to the 3 kilos and see how much we have to go back.
Because I think a lot of people are concerned, still a lot of people just don't even care, but a lot of people that are concerned with becoming more sustainable, it's this kind of, I don't know the proper word, like reductive or deductive process where you're like, okay, I have all this stuff. How can I get like mini versions of this and fit this in my backpack for my trip? And from what it sounds like from your experience, and I've experienced some of this myself, is if you get really down to like the bare bones basics, and then you kind of build on from there and say, okay, so I have nothing now, I have very little. Okay, could I use this a little bit? I imagine you get more selective with what you bring back into your life or bring back into your situation once you're down to this very basic survival level.
There's technology that we don't know yet, right? There's some technology coming we don't know yet. So far, we haven't missed it. And we have this like technology, let's say 4G mobile networks or 5G mobile networks or whatever else is coming, right? Like we don't know those yet. We don't need them yet. And once we grow used to them, we don't know anymore how to be without, right?
Yeah, of course. People are addicted now.
And I don't know if it's addicted. It's like we talked yesterday with some friends, like, where does it start? Just call it addiction. Like, because these are things that we are born into, if like addiction almost sounds a bit like a choice, like it's like, not choice, but like it's something that you do, right?
Yeah.
You and with most of these things that I would call an addiction, an unhealthy addiction in terms of lifestyle, these are things that we were born into. Like, and I think that's where I feel we as educators, and I say we as educators because I feel that everybody who has a certain level of maturity should consider themselves as educators.
Absolutely.
Like, we have a very strange situation. We are the first species on this planet whose offspring is well advised not to copy the parents' lifestyle.
Yeah, we're this. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of arguments to be said that every future generation is kind of cleaning up the mess of the past, but at the same time, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we find ourselves in a particularly interesting situation right now, like in the current grown-ups that are existing, us grown-ups that are in our prime right now of decision making, where we're at a point where we realize what we're doing is very unsustainable, and we actually have some, at least personal powers to change things. And actually, that's something I really like that you mention a lot in your videos, is that I thought it was really great. You talk a lot about, we got to try. I find you very reflective in your videos, and right now where you say, okay, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but or at least we got to try. I think you had a good quote from there. It was, we're sawing, we're very slowly sawing. We're sitting on the limb of a tree and we're very slowly sawing it off. So like, what would you do in that situation? If the ship was sinking, you would at least try to swim away. Maybe you survive, maybe you don't, but we have to at least push in the right direction, right?
I was like, the other day, I had an interesting conversation with I would say another activist from the Extinction Rebellion movement, and he said, like, well, like, what you're doing, it's like nice that you do, but it doesn't work for everyone because you're very brave. And I was like, I don't get that. Like, where's the brave part? And he said, well, you're doing something that you have no blueprint for. Like, there's no parent that has shown you how to live in the yurt. There's nobody who has shown you how to live off grid. It's not like you can call the father-in-law and ask how to get a bank loan. We have that kind of knowledge we have available, but we are lacking these kind of survival skills. We don't know how to live in a sustainable way. And in his opinion, it was like, me just trying it makes me very brave. And like, I had never been in a yurt before I spent my first night in my own yurt. So I had like no experience with the yurt, but I had experience. I knew that I can sleep, like weeks in the winter outside just with calories and sleeping bag and tarp, right? So as long as I'm warm, dry, and safe, I'll be fine. And I know I have been in a heated tent in the winter that didn't have insulation. I could take my gloves off. So I thought, like, okay, if those two work, then probably the yurt will work too. And also we have like a bit of history, like human history, that we lived in semi-nomadic ways with mobile shelters made from natural materials. So like, and that's for the most part of human history. So we have good evidence that this could work. So it didn't feel like, a jump in the cold water. On the other hand, like, it was still a step outside of my comfort zone, like the comfort zone of, living in systems that somehow I know how to operate within. What I found actually would need a lot more bravery is to stay inside a system where we know that it's killing our planet.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, but it is hard. I mean, it's so hard for people to see outside the bubble. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not a clear bubble. You know what I mean? I mean, on the surface, it is. I mean, we have more information than ever about what human impact is having on the environment. But what a big problem too is just kind of how people talk about, the animals, the environment, the people over there on the other side of the world. I saw this horrible video on YouTube about how there's this river in India somewhere where people are making fabric and it's all, all this color going, chemicals going. People think it's somewhere far away. They don't see what's happening. There's evidence no matter where you live of climate catastrophe and our impact. But there's this real big, like cognitive dissonance that's going on, and people just are disconnected from the means of survival. And I guess you are quite in touch with that, because if I understand right, you're also like a wilderness survival teacher or guide.
Well, I'm currently actually acting the chairman of the Wilderness Guides Association, international association that we kicked off a few years ago, and I work as a survival instructor.
Okay.
And like, I haven't given courses now for some time because I'm kind of reorientating myself. But the survival courses that I used to give was like basic wilderness survival. This is what people wanted to buy. So to, in whatever unlikely event that you end up in a wilderness setting and have to get your way back to civilization. And like, actually through these courses, I started to realize that civilization is not the safest space, right? And like when we, and this is like, now I'm not sure if I should open this Pandora box. In a way, I feel I should.
Yeah, go for it.
On the other hand, I should warn listeners that this is tough stuff. Like, this is not easy to take in information, and you might, I don't know, feel different about your life afterwards. And if I break it down, is like, nature is the only place on earth, right? Wherever we are, wherever you can breathe, wherever you can die, is nature. Like, you're actually even a minority where you are, because there's like 2 to 3 kilos of other organisms inside of you, right? So wherever we are, wherever we want to live and thrive, we must also be able to survive, right? Survival and thrival and living, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
And to survive, we as mammals, or as members of the global community of life, we need 6 priorities to be covered. So that's shelter, food, water, air, health, and community. Like, if this would now be a training, I would ask, like, what are our 6 survival priorities? And usually people don't get this list together. We don't know anymore what are our 6 survival priorities.
Right.
And usually where people are struggling is like health and air and community. Like, they get food, water, and shelter.
Yeah.
And shelter, for example, also a fire is a shelter, right? It's warm, dry, safe. That's what fire can provide. A parachute, a rowing boat, they can all be shelter. Yeah. So when we look at our 6 survival priorities, they need to be covered in a sustainable way. Otherwise, we have a survival situation.
What do you mean by,
Sorry,
what do you mean if these aren't covered, then we have a survival situation?
Okay, so if these 6 survival priorities, let's say you're falling from an aeroplane and you don't have a parachute, right? In that very moment, when you're still free falling, you have a shelter problem, right? You're probably not starving. You're probably not, dehydrating in that short time. And air is your least problem. And health and community might be able to help you. But very soon, if you don't fix your shelter problem, you will very soon have a huge health problem.
Gotcha. Yeah. So so you're saying if you pull out one of these 6 survival priorities, then you're going to have a problem. The system is going to fall apart.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So like, people understand this kind of so-called type 1 or type A survival situations. Like, you have a car accident, you open your eyes and you see both of your legs are severed from the knee down. A lot of blood is coming out. You see that, you need to do something now. Otherwise you will be dead in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. These are very obvious ones. And so survival situation is when 1 or 2 or more are missing or not covered in a sufficient way. So, and this is where we come to the type 2 survival situation, like maybe you could call them chronic, like slowly developing. And they're the dangerous one because we don't notice them. So, like, example is you're fighting inside a war in a how do you call it, these trenches, right? So you get some food, you get some sleep, you get some health care, you get some air, you get some water. Like, you get everything a little bit. So you don't notice that it's not, nothing of those are sufficient over the long term. And at some point, like your organism, your body is compensating. And this is also something where you don't notice it, right? And then at some point, it's not compensating anymore. And then it goes really rapidly down, right? Then it's like, the moment to act is when you don't notice it. Once you notice it, it's too late to act.
Which is kind of the situation the entire world is in right now.
Yeah.
Maybe back in the 1950s, actually.
Yeah. I really like to use the example of food because it's something which we can feel, right? If you go to a wilderness trip and if you have been on a trip and you step on a scale before you leave and step on a scale when you come back, you probably have lost some weight, right? Yeah. Maybe that's not a bad thing, right? In many cases, that's quite a healthy thing.
It's a joyous occasion. Everybody gets back went on a long bike ride this summer and came back a couple of weeks later and was like, wow, I'm so fit.
Yes. Yeah. So because we carry a lot of bulk around with us on our bodies that we don't really need, that comes from, oversupply of food and nutrients. But the thing is, like, if you would feed yourself from the wilderness, right? Like, according to human nature, we are persistent hunters. That's what we are good at. We are the fastest mammal on Earth over the distance.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I mean, of course, you have an elephant. They can walk longer distances. We have cheetahs who can run a lot faster, but they can't sustain that speed for a long time.
I see what you're saying.
Okay. Over the distance, we are the fastest. So, and this is what, how we hunted. We hunted by outrunning our prey. And this is how still, like, persistent hunt is still something that happens in the Kalahari, right? It's something that's still with us. So if you hunt, let's say you find fresh prints and you start running after a deer, and at the end of the day, you get the deer and you bring it home to the group. And of course, because you live in a group, you share it, you split it up, you don't get all the calories, right? And then you share, maybe you get one glove back, right? Somebody knows how to make from the skin, gives you a nice glove. So, which helps you to conserve energy. But you would really feel if you use more energy to get the food to your table than what you get back from eating the food. Right? In survival courses, people feel weaker and weaker every day because they don't manage to get the calories in that they consume.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah. So survival course sounds like, it's a good place to kind of get aware of certain skills and apply them back to back to your, like, everyday life. But, the situation that you're living in right now with Nomad Town, like how let's say, like, how off the grid or, like, disconnected are you from, let's say, like, the everyday system? How does that work?
I can't get there yet because I just opened the food subject.
Okay.
because I need to wrap this up.
Wrap it up.
The thing is, the thing is, like, in a wilderness situation, you would notice the difference between energy input and output. Right? What we have now we are, like, sitting maybe 8 hours per day by our office desk. We don't use much calories then. Then we sit in the car and then we push some button notification, like at home when we heat our tuna pizza in the oven. Right? We don't use much energy. And in this very short time of the supermarket, we can buy huge amount of energy, huge amount of kilojoules or calories, or however you want to call this. And so then we heat up this pizza and eat it, and everything seems to be fine. Our bellies are full and everything is good. We have an oversupply in nutrients and calories. And what we do not feel is the energy that it takes to produce and run the shipping vessel that is catching the tuna that will end up on our pizza, and the whole chain, of storing, processing, selling, transporting, packaging.
Yeah, the whole supply chain.
All this energy, all the supply chain, and it's still the same calculation, right? We still need to distribute this energy input over the amount of participants in this system. And we will see that we actually use a lot more energy than what we get back.
Absolutely.
And that's the same for every single food product in the Finnish supermarket.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's funny that you bring this up. Excuse me. As a teacher, I was a school teacher for a while, and one of my favorite activities to do the whole year is we would have students map the supply chain. I would tell them, okay, you have to pick a product that, it was like a photo essay. It was kind of like you go outside and you take pictures and collect photos and stuff. And I had them take a picture of an item that they use every day. It could be like a pen, could be a cookie, whatever, ice cream. And we would go through, we boiled it down to like the 6 steps of the supply chain from resource to consumer. And this was, I would say, the number one thing. Kids enjoyed this so much. Like, and I've done it with adults too. And I mean, adults enjoy it too. It's just people's minds are blown about where their products come from and all this energy that involves and all the natural resources. And it's such a simple activity that any person can really do, in a 30 minutes on the internet, go research where their item came from. And I mean, it is mind blowing. People are like fascinated. And sometimes I've also had people that got really terrified about where their products were coming from. They find out the labor that was involved and it's unethical, the child labor, how the animals are being treated, all this kind of stuff. And I mean, yeah, if you're listening out there and you've never done that before, go through the supply chain of any of your common items. It can be really mind blowing. And it's a good exercise to kind of like make you think about where this is coming from.
And I think we need to,
absolutely.
we need to rethink these ways, because we kind of slid into it. There's no one to blame, right? It's totally legal and advertised to buy avocado in Finland. It's certainly not part of the solution. And when I look at our situation right now, also the famous Finnish education system, the Finnish school system is really famous.
Best in the world, right?
It only, I don't know. I would say no, because
that's what we
yeah, but we still only manage to teach our children how to survive inside a system that itself doesn't survive. Right? And what is our role as educators? What is it our role as parents? We have to teach survival to our offspring. That's our only role. And we're not doing it because we don't know how to do it ourselves, right? We can try, and that's something that I hope that I can show to my kid. That I'm really sorry I brought you in this world. I don't know how to do this, but I can show you that at least it's possible to try.
Yeah, and I think that's like so important. I mean, okay, so on the one side of the situation, we have cataclysmic like climate change, and the world might be over, or like we might not be able to turn it around in 10 years, and it's just really overwhelming stuff for a lot of people. But at the same time, what I like about what you're saying, and what I say to a lot of people too, is that at least you can get started. At least you can try. I mean, it's this whole idea of like, in one way, being at least, I mean, at the very least on the right side of history. That might sound kind of weak, but like, I mean, I at least want to be on the right side of history to know if somebody asked me in the future, what were you doing? Okay, at least I tried, and that's the only way we can maybe reach some kind of solutions. I mean, on a governmental level, these things take way too long.
But they can impact. They have a high, that's the thing. Like the governmental level, it takes too long, but the impact can be high. If they change the law, the impact can be huge.
It's huge. So it's like we need to. I'm a big promoter of the attack from all sides idea. You do what you can in Finland with your knowledge of wilderness survival. I'll do what I can, being like sustainability minded and with my microphone. Some teacher in Mississippi can do what they can in their classroom. Some lawyer in Bangkok can work with the environment from their perspective. Of course, this is again kind of like working from all sides of the system. So, I mean, yeah, with your like 6 survival priorities and, the way that you are, I would say, acting this out, or the way that you're living. I mean, do you see how do you think that translates, for other people? Do you think, it would be great if everybody was, it's kind of a broad question, but is it good if everybody's living like that? Or what would you like to see other people doing?
Well, what you said is like, basically everybody has different possibilities. And I think what I would hope to see, I mean, like, who am I to talk, right? Like, I'm not doing as good as I think I could or should or want to. And I can only like share my own observations. I don't want to tell anyone how to do things, and I cannot. And what I personally feel is crucial is to understand that this is a survival situation, right? This is not about climate change. Climate change is just one out of many symptoms, right? We have the sixth mass extinction going on. We have 200 species dying every day because of our species that we probably depend on, right? So, I mean, the pictures is really bleak, and I don't even want to, paint it anymore because, you just have to switch on the news and you get all the negative stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, I think what is more important is to actually be aware of what kind of tools we can use to deal with our situation so that we do not panic. And that's where I disagree with Greta Thunberg. Like, she says that she wants us to panic. And I think that's not a good idea, because when we panic, we might buy a Ferrari or something. So
the world's ending. I'm going to go, live my best life and, go on a trip around the world and buy a Ferrari and my own plane. And
yeah. So, and there are like very good tools. Like, first of all, like, there are good ways to measure sustainability. And I think it's good to understand that more sustainable is just not enough. Right? It's either sustainable or not. We can start with the more sustainable, and there's like so many things that are really, really easy to do. Like, it's basically, it can just take 1 week to, just by choices that you make, to get your ecological footprint to the half of the Finnish average. Right? So, but that's just by choices. So it's like really easy to do a lot. But I think what is more important is to be able to deal with the situation in a manner that you actually avoid panic, because it's just, it has panic written all over it, right? Like, it's a situation outside of the comfort zone. We have no pre-experience. There's very little training we can do to deal with the situation. So there will be kind of all kinds of reasons to suggest that we should actually panic. And there's something from the survival courses that I like to recommend. That's the S.T.O.P tool. It's really like when you go to the situation of the car accident with the where you're bleeding to death, like to stop, S.T.O.P. Stop means to stop, sit down, slow down. T is to think, what is the situation? What are the priorities? And always observe what options, opportunities I have. And P is make a plan, right? That's the original S.T.O.P tool, and we're using in the Nomad a kind of modified version of that for the type 2 survival situations. But in a type 1 survival situation, it could look like this. Stop. Okay. I realize my situation is not good. T, I just throw in thank for good measure. Thank, I'm still alive. Because gratitude opens the mind to positive thinking. So we thank, that can be a split second. It can be just a thought, I'm still alive. And then think, what is the situation? What is my priority? Like, what priority am I lacking? The idea is, do I actually have a survival situation? Yes or no? Because something might look bad and there might be a lot of blood, it might not be a survival situation because it's not critical. Or maybe also the attention might be wrong, right? I see a lot of blood going, but I see an ambulance standing over there. But what I maybe don't feel is that there's fuel leaking and there's a fire burning. So there might be a different danger that I'm not aware of. So that's in the T. What is the priority that I have to take care of? Or what are the options? So you might see a seatbelt around you. You might have a pocket knife. You could make a tourniquet or something, right, to stop the bleeding. Or there might be a first aid kit. Or you could call for help. Or you could just maybe you realize I can just open the door and walk to the ambulance, right? And then P is making the plan and also choosing positive, right? And this is a tool that you can use in a type 2 survival situation as well, right? And how the Nomad has happened. The Nomad is a result of this tool. And we had in 2018, we had a 1 month experiment where we wanted to see, can we actually live 1 month without fossils, without rubbish, and without money? And it turned out to be such a wonderful time. We called it Sneak Peek into Paradise.
Good name.
And then I decided, okay, this is what I want for my son. Like I want, a life like this. And that came the Nomad town. And the S.T.O.P tool in this sense, or in this process, is something that we use every full moon. And we call it the full moon full stop.
Okay.
The reason to connect it to the full moon is that the full moon is neutral. It's a global phenomenon. It's a natural phenomenon that gives us a little bit of a distance, right? It's, the moon allows us to look at the world from a different angle. And so having this, like, kind of a bit of a sacred day once a month, which probably our ancestors also had as a sacred day once a month, kind of brings us maybe a little bit back together to a shared belief. Like, you have, in many religions, you have the sacred day, Sunday or Saturday or Friday. And now the shops are open on Sunday and on Friday and on Saturday the world over almost. So we are somehow lacking this day of slowing down a bit and rethinking and reflecting. So that's why we chose the full moon. We can see it coming. It's not in the calendar. It's not always on Sunday. It's sometimes on Tuesday. And it's just taking a day off. So taking a whole day off, not going to work, just stopping, slowing down, creating an environment where we can think in comfort, right? Have some tea. And then have gratitude and think the 6 survival priorities. Are they covered in a sustainable way? Yes or no? Do I actually have a survival situation? How about my circle of awareness compared to my circle of disturbance? Which maybe I think many nature connection mentors have an idea of this circle or use this concept of circle of awareness and circle of disturbance, which can also indicate, are you in a survival situation? Yes or no? And then it goes to the what are the options? What is already good? What do you see others can do? What kind of copy-paste solutions there might be, right? Like you see, okay, I have a lawnmower, the neighbor has a lawnmower. I can see that we don't use them both at the same time. So maybe we can share one away. Or maybe, not cut the lawn and have some hay that we use for our compost and our mulch beds and
can work together.
And P is, most of the things, basically it's all down to communication. That's, I think, the most
which is something that is, I think communication is, as much as communication technology that we have, I think that communication as a skill is quite underrated. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I mean, it's so important. And people just communicating about whether, feelings or even just basic stuff like I have this, you have that. Let's make this work together. Communication and working together, compromising, collaboration, and community. It's all got that. All these C words that are very underrated, especially now because we have all this information technology, so we can communicate like across the world, but we can a lot of times barely communicate with our neighbor or even our friends sometimes,
Yeah. And that's really interesting. Like on the one hand, we can communicate. It's a bit like a Babylon situation, right? Like we're building this big tower and suddenly we have 20 different platforms where we can communicate and different channels, and you can't keep up and follow up. And suddenly you want to and need to know how your lifestyle choice is affecting if the forest in Brazil is burning, because it matters for your survival if the forest in Brazil is burning. And it's just too much information. And at the same time, basically what we need to do is we need to grow our own food and have a good time with the neighbor. Because
I do think that there are a lot of misconceptions about this idea of kind of going off the grid or creating your creating some kind of nomad town or something. I think a lot of people would hear that and be like, oh well, not everybody can live like that, or like this person told you, oh well, you're so brave to do that. But I mean, not only is it necessary to survival, but it's also not it doesn't sound to me like a selfish thing. It's I'm doing this because of my survival depends on your survival. All of our survival depends on the collective survival, and this is about working together. It's not just about in
a way, it's you have this swap egocentric to ecocentric, right? And I think that's like, where it's both the same, right? Because if I'm living ecocentric, if life in all its diversity is my number one priority, because this is why I am, right? I can only be because of life in all its diversity. And this is also at the same time, I feel for myself, this is my reason of being, is life in all its diversity. So if it's good for the life in all its diversity, it's good for me. So I don't know, is it called egocentric or
exactly? Sometimes it's like the being altruistic is maybe one of the most selfish things you can do in a way.
Yeah, like if you are like the most selfish person in the world, then you probably should be very concerned about your levels of nature connection. Because you will need, if you are interested in yourself only, then you will benefit the most by being deeply connected and concerned about the rest of nature.
Exactly. Yeah. If you are concerned with survival. But not to go off on too far of a tangent, but I think there are some drawbacks to, a lot of belief systems. This is just, my opinion, but because you find that there's a lot of people, I'm going to say government officials, at least I can say in the United States and around the rest of the world, that are so concerned with their external beliefs that include an afterlife or like a different world or something like that they're going to go to, and that, this world is just for pillaging and the next world is for living in paradise.
Well, let me give you this for ponder. I studied comparative religious science
that's
at
right,
university.
yes.
So there are religions who believe where there are people who follow religions where there is the concept of rebirth, right? We know that. What is not so well known, there's like in many of these religions, it's very possible to be reborn in the past. Right? It's not because time is not a linear thing in this belief. So if you say like, yeah, this world is like now for just abusing, future will, you might actually be born, back into the life of your neighbor when you were a kid.
Yeah, I mean, and so this is actually, this is kind of almost like, in a way, kind of polar opposite of the survival situation, because of course, with belief in different religions, afterlife, this kind of stuff, it's like that's great, but what it sounds like is what survival priorities give you is, okay, that's great if you want to believe all these different kinds of things, but right now, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to survive in this moment? Rather than waiting to die and then turn into something else.
Well, make a plan according to the T and the O. That's to me like how to do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't let you get to the P. Did you want to tell us about the P?
Oh well, it's very simple. Like in the full moon, full stop, after the observation, seeing what options you have. Like you need to make a plan, and then the plan is something that must be doable, right? You can't. And like you must be able to accomplish it. At the same time, it should still be challenging. And because we are doing this full moon, this stop every full moon, we are only making plan for the next month, right? There might be a long-term intention, like a long-term direction, but the plan is always just for the next month. It usually is like picking one or two survival priorities and focusing on them and do something about them.
Yeah.
And community is probably always part of that. So community is always, the survival priority should always be part of the plan, because community is like really easy to take care of by just investing yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about the community aspect of survival is that, of course, there's a lot of benefits to having community when it comes to like mental health benefits, having friends, having a good time, all this kind of stuff. But I think when it comes to survival, that's a part of mental health is, of course, a part of survival. But what a lot of people don't realize is that it's literally necessary for your survival. Like you can't do everything on your own, I mean, there are some of these rare cases of, the guy that lived in the woods for 40 years and built his own house and lived completely by himself. But for the most part, most people can't do everything on their own. It's like, I cut the wood while you tend to the garden. But, we only have so much bandwidth in our brains, in our minds to take care of it, to survive. So we need each other, like literally.
Yeah. And also I think the individual knowledge, like if I think of my own skills and knowledge, they're probably like similar to that of a 5-year-old from Stone Age times. So like by far not mature. So I really need others like to throw in more knowledge in the same pot. And yeah, and a part of the P is by the way, is to choose positive. Like what you said, well, about this, some people that survived on their own for long times. Like we have evidence like from, diaries and videos and things of people who did not survive survival situations. And we have situations where people had the same odds, right? There is similar situations and one survived, the other one didn't.
Yeah.
And like the reason in most of these is that people gave up the hope. They didn't believe that they could do it. And then again, there are people like who believe that they could do it, or maybe had no idea. I don't know if I can do it or not, but at least I can try, right? So at least I die trying, if I die, right? And I think that's probably the biggest choice we have to do in the moment is like, and I believe happiness is a choice, right? That got me out of depression was I chose happiness. Like, and I think the Dalai Lama put some words that really helped me on that direction. But that's like, we have to choose being positive. And because if we don't choose being positive, like what we are doing in the moment, we are committing suicide.
But this is very interesting because this is something that I think positivity gets confused a lot of time with I think a lot of times critical thinking or and creative thinking gets confused with negative thinking, and a lot of times critical thinking in like general society is not considered to be a part of positive thinking, which to me sounds very like opposite of how, like, for example, a lot of people, I'm talking for myself at least, you can talk about, this is happening, the climate change is happening, this is happening. And people say, I don't want to talk about these negative things. And I don't know about you, but for me, getting that message out, having this conversation, like this doesn't seem negative to me. Doesn't seem depressing. This seems like something that's positive. We're getting the message out. We're hopefully igniting a flame that gets more people moving and all that kind of stuff. That's to me, it seems like a positive action. But I think a lot of people just living their daily lives, living in downtown Oslo, downtown Joensuu, downtown Miami or whatever. They don't want to talk about these kind of things that are considered to be negative. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you ever encounter anything like that?
Well, yeah, of course, there's a lot of people who do not want to go there. Like if it feels to us that there's a possibility to avoid these kind of understandings or realizations, we might try to do so. And it's really like the thing is like everything feels good, right? We have fancy shelters, we are warm, dry, and safe. We don't really feel everything that is connected to our fancy shelters, right? So like we don't feel the urgency, and this is as long as we don't feel the urgency, we feel that we can avoid looking at it, and it feels, of course, much better to avoid it than facing it. And at the same time, I feel that a lot more people, and I think the Fridays for Future movement has played a big role in it, that a lot more parents now also realize that actually we have something that we need to look into. And we as parents must be the ones who are taking active steps and show our children that at least we try and not avoid this conversation. And I found it so interesting when we had the Fridays for Future demonstration started, like a lot of people from the elder generation, like the 60 plus years, they were really upset that the children don't go to school, right? Because children have to go to school. Like, what is this kind of attitude, right? We created the school system. We spent a lot of work to make the school system, and then now you don't use it. What's the point there? And then the same generation, right? Because they were like risk group for the COVID, or our risk group for the COVID, they were really grateful when the kids then didn't go to school. And then which is really interesting, because the COVID is like, that concerns one species, right? And then only the certain age group in one species, like mainly, well, the others also, of course, but it's a human thing. Whereas, what the Fridays for Futures, they have more about the climate change. For me, it's like in general the ecological crisis, or the survival situation in general, including climate change and other symptoms. Like, that is concerning all species.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's like, that's really a big thing to look at. And it's also, I think that's also the reason why people maybe don't want to look at it, because it's too big to understand, too big to, get an idea of what that actually means.
Yeah, it's very overwhelming for a lot of people. I think we keep kind of coming back to that idea again and again throughout our talk today, is this, idea of, yes, it can be overwhelming, but you just got to, try. It's kind of like, we've been programmed, in, modern society to act in this very, hyper capitalistic kind of, regimented way. We might not see it, but, it's very common to go to work for 8 hours a day. It's very common to sit on your butt most of the day in a position that is not very compatible with the bipedal organism, with the way that our bodies are designed. This is all just very common now. And even these things that are actually quite basic, it's like people, my back hurts. I was complaining about that last week. My back hurts. There's reasons for that are very much, just connected, that we can change really in like a day. You can change the way you sit. You can change, and these little things make, you change the way you sit, you change your perspective, you change how you think you can work. Maybe you see that you don't need to do things like this, or you don't need to work in that way, or you don't need to, we've seen this a lot with COVID. A lot of people no longer need to go to their offices. We don't need to maintain these giant buildings anymore.
Which is really interesting, right? When you think about what do we need to do, right? We need to take care of our 6 survival priorities. This is what we need to do. And well, reproduce might also be one of the needs, but that's part of community. So, and what are we actually doing, right? Like, how many people of us are actually working on taking care of food and shelter, right? So we're having professions that are relevant for our system, but not really relevant for life, right? We have, professional football player might be one of those examples. Doesn't really help. They don't grow food, but they create a lot of community, like, valuable moments, I guess. But there's like so many professions where we, like, for example, anything connected to electricity, like production of electricity or transportation, right? Like, we're looking at electric cars now, and there's people working on developing very energy efficient electric cars. What we do, it's a bit like going to the doctor with a headache, and the doctor gives you a pill and another pill and another pill next day and another pill, and never asks, like, do you actually drink enough or do you actually sleep?
Yeah.
Right. So, like, it's a bit of a system fighting the electric cars or the green electricity. And what we fail to see is that we do not need electricity to survive, right? It has, like, when you look at the human body, at who you are, you do not need electricity to survive originally, right? We have created a dependence to it because we don't know how to store our food without electricity or transport it without electricity. But at the same time, like, these are not priorities, right? We do not need motorized long distance transportation with vehicles which are heavier than we are ourselves.
Yeah.
No matter if they are powered with electricity or with petrol, right?
Yeah, we've become, I think it's safe to say, Although it's hard for many to realize, which is why we're in the situation we're in, because we were, like you said, we were just born into this, but we've become very distant from our top 6 survival priorities. And we've become dependent on this system that provides our survival for many people, but not everybody, of course. There's a lot of homeless people and a lot of people that are sick and injured all day. But we become very distant from these 6 survival priorities, and we are dependent on a system that provides that for us in a very abstract way that doesn't really match our bodies.
Very fragile,
very fragile,
very complex, very interconnected, and very destructive, obviously, also. And in a way, it feels like, so, I don't know, I don't want to talk too much about this, because basically the message to me is more like not how bad everything is, but, what kind of beautiful utopia I can imagine. Like in crisis is always the time for utopists. So, and I think there's like beautiful utopias that I can really see happen. And there's a lot of things that somebody called utopias, and now they're actually happening. Like, and they don't make it into the news because,
they're not good for business.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but like when I look at the fast growth of the like eco-village network or the rewilding movement, or like what we see, how the values of like outdoor education, like these are stories that are much worthwhile, because if we want to survive, we need to meet reality. If we want to meet reality, we need to spend more time outside than indoors, at least more time outside than online. And this is what outdoor education is doing. And I think part of education must be to teach survival. And to teach survival, we must have nature connection, because we need to survive in nature. Nature is still the only place on earth. And so I think that's like so easy to do. Like nature connection is so easy to do because, nature is right where you are sitting. You don't need to go outside of the city to be in nature, right? It's just, we need to look at things maybe a bit differently and feel a bit differently about our own nature and how we can connect with it.
Yeah, nature connection. It's a really great way to kind of wrap it up. Nature connection is really just in the crack in the sidewalk where the little plants poking out. It's trying to tell us something.
It's in every breath. It's in every breath, right? It's in every breath. Every droplet of moisture that you breathe in. If you just like go through a little exercise, okay? Josh, you're there. Okay, and we have a listener there somewhere.
Hopefully many.
So, okay, close your eyes.
Right.
Okay, and feel into your body. And most of it is water, right? And most of this water stays in your body only for 14 days, about. Then it moves on. The water molecules move on. And when you breathe in, there's moisture in the air that will be absorbed by your body, that will become part of your body. Same when you breathe out, some of these molecules that have been part of your body, they go out through your breath, out of your skin when you sweat, right? And these water molecules, they have been around forever. So the same water molecules that are in your body now, they're millions and billions of years old, and they have been underground, they have been on the glaciers, they have been in the clouds and in the oceans, and they have been in other organisms. They have been part of a dinosaur one day. And we have like indications, or like we know, for example, that plants fulfill all our criteria for intelligence, which is social behavior, memory, and communication. And it looks more and more like this, that actually water fulfills the same criteria. And how crazy is that?
It's super crazy. I hope got lots of people out there trying this breathing exercise. I have to say it's nice imagining kind of the primordial soup of history and sand and water and dinosaurs rolling through your body. Thanks for that. Hey, Huck, I think I'm gonna, with respect to your time, I think I'm gonna wrap it up for today. But I just wanted to ask you, I think we have a much more discussion in the future, but I wanted to ask you, for we wrap it up, do you have any plans like for the future of Nomad Town? And is it also possible for people to visit you or come and learn with you?
Yes, definitely. Like, most happily, come any day, not on Monday. Monday is inhabitants only. and if you come, we have Tuesdays, we have open sauna, or like whoever comes, give us a note before you come so we know that somebody is coming. And then if you want to come and visit, like sometimes people they want to come for a weekend and then they spend 2 months there, which is really nice. So at least come for 2 nights, because it takes some time to, get to know routines and how we do things, how we live. And like the ideal, this is something where I learned a lot of lessons. Like when I started as the first inhabitant, I was hoping that there would be pioneers coming, right? People who come with their own shelter, maybe a tiny house, eco or whatever. And what actually happened was that people approached us like who have problems with multi-chemical sensitivity. People like with inside air, with mold. So people came, like loads of those people, because they're floating around. They're moving from apartment to apartment to apartment all the time, and they're looking for safe places to be. So a lot of these people came to us. So in a way, that's really good. Ideally, we would be able to provide home and space for anyone, no matter what age and limitations and possibilities somebody has. At the same time, in the moment, I have to say it takes time to take care of life, right? Making firewood, gathering food, all these things, it takes a lot of time, especially when it's still a small group. So if I can have a wish, like, it would be good if you have been sleeping outside before and know how to, cook a meal on the fire. But it's not necessary. It's just helpful.
And are you still working? I know because I was searching you online. Are you still working sometimes as a wilderness guide or survival teacher? Are you still working with this?
Yes, I do. I do cooperations with another company. Like I have the NordicByNature.net, which is probably like, wilderness guides are not good with marketing. At least they're contradicting. It's 2 different realities. But yeah, I do, and happily do. Anything between 2 hours and 2 weeks is possible to arrange, basically. Best is always if people contact me and ask, hey, I want to do something. So, but I'm also trying to arrange now survival basic courses again, twice a year. And I focus mainly with my activities on the local community. So, like exchange students, we have a university in Joensuu. So I'm trying to offer something to young adults who are in Joensuu anyway. So, but if you come traveling through, please visit.
Oh, I already have it on my map of places I want to go. I mean, it's too bad I didn't know about this earlier, because I was just me and my partner, we were on a bike trip to last year. We biked out of the way.
Oh, wow.
And I would have loved to stop by, because I have this dream myself of just kind of biking.
Bit of a detour.
Yeah, but if there's a place to stay and camp out. I mean, you have also in Finland, you have this. It's similar here in Norway and in Sweden and pretty much everywhere up here, where you can kind of camp where you want. You have a really funny word for it, which I don't know if you know the word for it, but I always try to say it. Do you know this word where you can camp wherever you want, like freedom to?
Well, I call it the every person's right. It used to be called every man's right, and in Finnish it's called jokamiehen oikeus.
That's the word.
Which means every man's right. But,
can you say it one more time?
Joka miehen tai joka henkilön oikeus. I think joka henkilön oikeus is much better. It means every person's right.
Cool. Yeah, that's the word I was always trying to learn when I was in Finland, because it was really helpful to know about joka. Oh, I can't say it, but I'll try to learn it for next time. So I think we'll cut it there for today. Huck, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, listeners. Looking forward to hear also comments and questions.
I'd like to hear if anybody else tries to do the full moon stop out there, because it sounds like a really awesome thing to do.
Full moon full stop, recommend it. It works. It gives solution for your own life, for a global situation. So And if somebody is using this tool, please, I would be very interested to hear feedback. Also, if somebody wants full moon pool stuff to be facilitated, I'm happy to come over or try something online to help. Yeah, sustainability consulting I do also, by the way.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, that's the next episode. I think I want to hear a lot about that. So hopefully people get in contact. I want to thank you so much for your time and hanging out in the sauna. And
just thank you so much for this idea of this podcast. It's been a pleasure to listen to the previous episodes, and I'm looking forward to more episodes. You're doing great work.
Thanks. Yeah, you too. I mean, this is great. This is the community that we're kind of trying to connect here, because I think we're all out here. There's all these people out here just kind of working in their communities, or maybe working alone or in their region, and we're trying to get this global connection because I don't know. I think it's not a bad idea. So yeah, thanks a lot, Huck. It was super great to talk with you. Feel free to stick around after the show if you want for a minute. And yeah, hopefully we hear from you again, and good luck now that the winter is coming to Nomad Town in Finland. All right, and welcome back, everyone. Thank you, Huck, if you're listening out there in Finland. We tackled a ton of different issues in our conversation today. Everything from saunas to sustainability, hibernation, minimalism, the 8 shields model, 6 survival priorities, and the full moon S.T.O.P tool. So I'm definitely going to leave a list of some of these things in the description. So if you're interested, you can go back and listen to those sections of the podcast, or you can explore more on the internet or in your local library. But one nugget of info I would just like to sift out of all of this is this idea of just giving it a try. Listen, sustainability can't be achieved by one person or in one day, but it can all start with those first steps. I think we keep coming back to this idea throughout the episodes. It's not easy to fix everything right now, but it is easy to just start trying in any way that you can. Being able to participate in the circle of self-care and care for others is essential for our survival and the survival of everything. So I thank Huck for sharing his perspectives on that, about what he's cultivated, and giving it to us out here in the liminal space. And please don't forget, everybody, to check out Huck's YouTube channel, because it's just a wealth of information. You can get some really great visualization of what he's up to out there in the Nomad town out there in Finland. So these are our transnatural perspectives today, and I'm your host, Josh Bennett, thanking you so much for tuning in, and I hope you found this valuable use of your time and attention. Please make sure to share this around and keep the perspectives expanding, and make sure to follow us on Twitter and otherwise at Transnatural Pod to stay updated. Until next time, get outside and connect. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks and peace.